Welcome to the Tyneside Irish Cultural Society podcast with me, Michael McNally.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our May podcast. I hope that you're well and looking forward to a lovely summer. Let's put behind us the awful year that we've had. I'm looking forward to gigs and meeting people who I haven't seen for a long time. We've got some interesting guests lined up for you, so let's get started. Our first guest in our May podcast, the sensationally talented Fiana, who's come all the way from Limerick. And I've got her here right now, and hopefully she's going to play a bit of the harp for us a bit later on. Fiana, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Michael. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great, thank you. And thanks for giving up some time on a bank holiday weekend. And it's beautiful outside here, isn't it? Is the weather nice there?
Oh, it's fabulous here in lovely Limerick today. So it's good to see the sunshine.
Fab. Now, Fiana, you're going to be coming over to play in our Tyneside Irish Music Festival later in the year. And we're so looking forward to having live music back after such a long time. Seems like an eternity. And I know that you're going to be a huge hit here. Can you just tell us a little bit about your musical background? Because I know you're from a musical family.
Yeah, so my mother and all of my mother's side of the family would have played music. So, and actually it was my granny who got me into playing the harp. She just decided she'd like some more harp players in the family. So my sister and I got elected and we got sent into music lessons with Janet Harpist in the School of Music. So that's how we came to it. So I guess I get family gatherings and stuff like that because my cousins and, as I said, my aunts all played music as well. My mum is a fiddle player. So she kind of would have played with us when we were growing up and kind of learning as well. So it's kind of great to have that encouragement at home as well, to kind of help progress you and see a different side, to just the traditional lessons, that there's, the social aspect to it as well.
Now, I know that you've achieved quite, you've done a lot of academic stuff as well as you're playing. And you're a teacher and you teach lots of people. What do you prefer most? Do you prefer teaching or do you prefer performing?
I think I like them both equally, actually. I don't think I give up a performance opportunity, but I love to teach and I love to see students progress, and particularly the kids that love the harp as well. It's kind of great to see that enthusiasm and that the instrument is still kind of strong, today, because it was in a little bit of a decline for a while, but now the tradition is really safe. So it's great that so many more performers are teaching, so I'm doing those kind of dual roles.
What's your favorite gig that you've done?
My favorite gig, oh gosh, I perform actually with a student ensemble, and we brought them over to the Tyneside Irish Centre a few years ago. Myself and Tony had a bit of a brainwave that this is something we might like to do. So that was really fun, and I do love performing with other harp players and colleagues as well as students. So I had a colleague of mine come on that trip with us with the kids, and it's just fabulous to feel the energy on stage. And we kind of did a bit of a show with dancing, and some of them played other instruments and stuff. So it was really cool.
Have you found it difficult teaching over the past year? Because I've been doing some teaching myself, but it's been everything's been Zoom. Has that impacted on the way you can teach? How have you adapted?
Most students were willing to give it a try anyway, which was great, because sometimes people can be resistant to change, and it was change for me as well. There's nothing like being able to play live in person with somebody, but it was a good substitute for the circumstances that we found ourselves in, and to be able to, that the students were able to continue their progression, and it wasn't just kind of dropped off because of the pandemic.
Hopefully we're coming to the end of this now, and we can look forward with more positivity. But the most important thing, I think it's just being able to get to gather together as groups of people and enjoy live music, which I've certainly missed an awful lot. And anyway, I'm really looking forward to seeing you play in the autumn over here in Newcastle. You've got your harp there, haven't you? Do you want to play something for us now?
I would love to. So I'm going to play a piece composed by Michael McNally. It's called Manali Trima, and it's a little waltz that is just very charming. So we'll give this a try.
That was absolutely beautiful. I'm sat here, the sun's blazing outside, and I was just I was transported elsewhere there. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Oh,
I look
thank you
forward to
very much.
meeting you when you come up to Newcastle. And
Absolutely.
thank you very much for your time, and enjoy your bank holiday weekend.
Absolutely, you too. And hello to everyone over there in the Tyneside community. I'm looking forward to meeting you all again.
I've actually tried about 5 times to get Tony Flynn to come on the show, and he's been most evasive. I'm sure he hasn't really, but we've been trying to get him on for a long time, and I'm really pleased to have him here, because when you ask anybody about the history of the Irish Centre, everyone will say there's one man who knows everything, and that's Tony Flynn. So welcome, Tony. Thank you very much for giving us some of
Thank you very much. I don't know about that. I think Tony Corcoran knows more than me.
Well, Tony Corcoran is hard to beat when it comes to anything to do with the history of the Irish Centre. I know that. But it's great to have you here, Tony. And it's a beautiful bank holiday weekend, and I really appreciate your time. So thanks for supporting our podcast. Now, talking about the 150th anniversary of the Irish Centre, how did it originate? How was it set up at the outset?
I think there was one driving force behind it. Someone by the name of Bernard McNally, who is a prosperous businessman from Ireland. He came over in the 1830s and was a draper, and with a number of others decided they needed an Irish centre in Newcastle to be the first port of call for people coming over from Ireland, because don't forget, from the 1840s onwards, there's a great rush from Ireland to Tyneside to escape the famine and to find employment on Tyneside. So it was a natural match, really, for Irish people fleeing the famine, looking for work. And on Tyneside, there was a great Victorian boom of industry. And so Bernard set up this centre with the idea of saying to people, we'll give you some advice about housing, employment, etc. But also there was a major political side to it as well. He was very politicized, as a lot of people who came over from Ireland were. They were interested in home rule, they were interested in the land league, and they were keen to carry on that political influence, as it were, and educate other people. So the first Irish Centre was set up in Clayton Street. Anyone who knows the Granger Market, the Collingwood Hall, Collingwood Pub, is still there. It's sadly, it's an amusement arcade at the moment. So that was the first Irish Centre, and a lot of people in Newcastle had Irish background. And as we know, the whole of Tyneside, you just have to mention your name and say, oh, well, you must be Irish. Probably the first comers to Newcastle and the whole of the area were sort of labourers looking for work, and they joined the centre. And it was like a welcome sign to everyone, the Irish Centre, just as it is nowadays. If you go to any city around Europe, you always look for the Irish bar, not only to find the best beer, but to get the best crack from people. So that's how it started up, and it's been successful since then in various venues, in Westgate Hill, in Westmoreland Road, and probably for the last 30 years in its current position in the top of Stowell Street in Newcastle, opposite St James's Park at the Gallagate end, and has been very successful, not only offering people a drink when they need it, but also the cultural side is very flourishing indeed. I need to say that because my wife Barbara is the cultural officer in the Irish Centre, and that's a thriving concern. And come October, with the Irish Festival, we'll be celebrating the 150th anniversary with lots of events, historical talks, with music, of course, with dancing, which is very much a feature of the Irish Centre, and many other things. Many people coming over from Ireland, bands in particular. Hopefully, the lockdown will be released by then, and we'll be able to have a decent festival, which we haven't had over the last year.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm just going back to the very, the humble and early beginnings, and I'm trying to put myself in the mind of the people setting it up. and the challenges they would have faced. You know, you're in a different country, you're trying to set up a centre where people have come from Ireland and gather together. Would there be much resistance to that? Would it have been, what challenges would they have faced in the early days?
Well, I think there was some resistance in the community. Don't forget, in the 1860s, it was the rise of the Fenians who, for the first time, tried to use force in Ireland to bring about a republic, and they for the first time they started activities in mainland Britain, and many of them have been imprisoned, and so they had to be very careful. They called it the Irish Literary Institute, which had a grand name, of course. It sounded, rather fantastic. And as Tony Corcoran in his booklet said, don't forget it had a bar, irrespective of the fact that it had such a grand title. But yes, there was that anti-Irish feeling, because a lot of Irish people came over in poverty, looking for employment in the railways, on the, down the mines, in the shipbuilding. You were aware in Jarrow, in Palmer's shipyard. My own grandfathers were involved in that. So a lot of people came over looking to survive, but there was the resistance, I suppose, of people thought, the Irish people were a threat to them because they were seeking, firstly, home rule and a better situation back home in terms of being able to own property, which had been prevented for many years. So there was a political edge to the first Irish Centre, as there always has been, the people demanding their rights. And for many years, don't forget, the Irish in Ireland, it was the first British colony, and they were sort of up against it, as it were. So they had to balance the politics with the fact that there were a welcoming place for the Irish community coming over. And thankfully on Tyneside, they had a good welcome, because largely they were from, the Irish were from Connaught, the province in the north of Ireland, mainly Catholics. They were welcome because industry needed people working in those jobs. So it was a natural fit, as it were. So by and large, there was not the sectarianism that perhaps you had in Glasgow and Liverpool, etc. And by and large, the Irish were welcome on Tyneside, and there was a good welcome. And that's been the history, really, ever since. There's always been a welcome on. There's a book written, When Paddy Met Geordie. There's always been a good link between the two countries.
Now, over that time, there must have been sort of period. I know it's thriving as a cultural centre now. Put COVID aside, I mean, just before COVID, all of the educational projects which take off within the Irish Centre and out in the wider community, it's tremendous. But over the 150-year period, there must have been some really dark times when perhaps the place almost was lost.
Had difficult times. I mean, they had good times. I mean, the centre was the place where the Tyneside Irish Brigade was founded during the First World War in 1914. Irish people got together and they said, we're going to support the British in the war against Germany, on the understanding that they would get home rule. So there was a political edge to it. I think during the Second World War, there was periods of time where the Irish Centre wasn't operating the way it is now, because there weren't the people around, etc., etc., and it was difficult to find a natural home. I mean, I don't know all the details about the various venues they've had over a period of time. That's part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to pull together a souvenir booklet, setting out the timeline for the Irish Centre over a long period of time. So there were times when it closed down and wasn't operating, and the cultural side of it wasn't as thriving as it is now. But over a period of time, we've been able to develop, literary groups, a book club, music classes, history classes, Irish classes, a whole host of things that really are beginning to flourish now. And when you consider that Newcastle is probably one of the best places in the whole of the country for having that continuous line of Irish centres at different periods of time, it was an early club. We don't know all the histories of other clubs. I suspect London and Liverpool had good Irish centres, but that continuous involvement of Irish people in a place where they could meet, called the Irish Centre. So I think it has been thriving over the years, but it's had good times and bad times, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's probably been a lot of people, I would suspect, who sort of, had it not been for COVID, given the Brexit situation, so a lot of people who wanted to sort of trace the roots and try and get Irish passports and remain part of Europe and sort of identify with their background a bit more. And then COVID came along, got away in the way a little bit. I know that my dad, who's not in the greatest of health at the minute, but he's fine. He was sort of looking to get his Irish passport, and I desperately wanted him to, but haven't got around to it. And that, it's such a shame. But the centre's there for it's a point of contact, and you can get all of this information that you require if you just know who to ask. And how can people do that? Because rather than just go for a pint, how can you engage with that side of the Irish Centre?
Well, you can look on the website, the Irish Cultural Society. They have they've got a new website that sets out everything that's taking place. It's just about to open again and flourish. I mean, I'm like you, really, or your father. My grandfather came over to Jarrow in 1891 to become a policeman, to keep an eye on all those Irishmen that had come over. And because of that, because he was born in Strabane in County Roscommon, I'm able to get an Irish passport. And I've only got halfway to actually doing it. Firstly, I applied for an Irish passport, and I found out that you firstly had to claim citizenship of Ireland first. And it was largely Brexit that prompted me to do that. And I must follow it through, but a whole lot of people have actually followed that through and have applied for passports. I think there's a bit of a waiting list now. There's such as the demand in the embassy in London. But I mean, throughout the lockdown, you mentioned the lockdown, we've been able to keep in touch with people. You mentioned before, I think, on your podcast, the fact that we produce a booklet, a newsletter every month. It is fantastic, getting out to over 600 people who haven't been able to come into the centre, but really wait for this newsletter dropping through their door to read all about what is going on and what's likely to happen. And hopefully, shortly, soon, we'll be able to get people back into the Irish Centre. But I mean, there's been a lot of changes over the last year, but people have been able to keep in contact with us, and I think the newsletter has given people a lifeline. To say, the Irish Centre is concerned about them, is interested in them, has provided material that, has entertained them and sometimes informed them of what is actually going on.
Yeah, the newsletter is immensely valuable. And at Christmas time, I was really humbled to go out and basically meet some of the people in the community, just delivering little hampers that were put together. And it was... I was quite moved, to be honest with you, the number of people I met who were so almost disenfranchised from everything. They were just locked in their homes and hadn't been out for a long time. People with disabilities and some of the elderly members of the community. And you realised how much of a lifeline this was. And you could see the appreciation for just a small little gift from the Irish Centre, how much it meant to you, and that sense of community. You can't place a value on that. It's immense.
Well, that's right. I mean, over the previous years, everyone was able to turn up at specific events called Raison Songs and Stories, where there was music played, there was entertainment. They were able to socialise with each other. They had a nice lunch prepared, from Teesside up to Northumberland and across to the Cumbria area. And so people were able to socialize, but now they're not, and so that link, I think, is very important. It is going to be very important when we open up again. That people say, despite the bleak period of time, we had a great contact with the Irish Centre, and I think the letters that we receive from people and the acknowledgement of that contact is very important.
Yeah. Well, Tony, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. Very, very interesting. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. And people can look forward to their souvenir booklet when it comes out. I'm not sure whether they're going to have to pay for it, but hopefully it'll tell people more about the history of themselves and the centre in the region.
That's fantastic. Tony, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you very much, Michael. Get out in the sun now.
I'm going to. Thank you very much. I'm playing a gig this afternoon. That's fantastic. I'm indoors, though. I'm not outside. Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for this month. Thank you very much to our guests, Fiana and Tony. Greatly appreciated. Look forward to seeing you all in June. Take care.